My concern with this is that, I think the science that has been done to this point, that is, where they have used science to show that there are flaws in Darwinian thinking, has been terrible science. Very weak science, as I see it. And I think virtually all scientists would say that, but not all. But most would say that. And so the science to this point is not strong science. It's got other interpretations. Very often what they're doing is they're jumping in points where there's a lack of where the scientific data is not quite all in yet, where there is void. There's always, science is always moving forward. There's always new data coming out. And so there are certainly gaps and holes in our scientific understanding. And so to some extent, that's where intelligent design steps in, and they're saying science can't explain this. And it's not that they won't be able to explain it, it's that they just haven't got it all worked out yet. I'm not optimistic at all that we'll ever reach the point where we can use scientific methodology to discover, to detect the handwork of God, the work of God. In the same way as what scientifically, I spoke earlier about the role of God in my life and how I became increasingly convinced that God was really there, listening and communicating with me, and that there was really, but I know that no scientific tools would be able, one could not use scientific tools and say, oh yeah, we can prove that in Darrel Falk's life that God was involved here. And God doesn't work that way. I'm not, theologically, if nothing else, I'm not comfortable with this notion that we're going to be able to use the tools of humankind, inadequate as what they are, to measure the handiwork of God. Partly that may relate to the very, mostly it probably relates to the very nature of God, who steps in and works in whatever way that God would want to work. Not in ways that are necessarily regular, following some laws. The God of the Bible steps in and works in a particular way which we can't predict to start with. And so how can we go back in creation and be able to say, oh, there's where God was working? Because it might have been a singularity, a time where God only worked in that way, that one point in time. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is it might be also subtle anyways. God is subtle. We know the God of the Bible is subtle. The God of our lives is subtle. And so how can you measure that kind of subtlety through using the crude tools of science? I'm skeptical.